Hey, you guys, good morning. So, we're here going to speak with Heather. I was running 1 minute late. We're getting some painting done in the house. It's going to be an exciting time. So, Heather is a phenomenal woman who has gone through some significant difficulties as we all encounter in our lives. And she is going to be kind enough to just step us through some of her life and let us journey with her and see what she's doing, how she's picked up the pieces, how she's feeling currently in our world with the temperature around us. She's a remarkable woman. Let's just see. I think there she is. She just texted me. I was the one who was a minute late. So Heather. Let's see. Heather.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank you for being patient with me. I was trying to run and keep the house quiet. I got here 1 minute late because we're getting some painting done. Because I
Okay.
keep saying I'm going to do some painting, and I like that. What's happening behind you?
Okay. I painted that wall
Shut
in the
up.
times of COVID. Yes.
I adore it. See, that's the vision I had for all the wonderful things I was going to do during the time of COVID. And what had happened was, it just didn't happen.
Well, it was very easy. It took me on. I just did one wall that had no windows, so that it was super easy to do, and it took me about 4 or 5 hours total.
I love it, Heather.
Yeah, I love it
I,
because it's my bedroom. So
oh,
yeah.
nice. Sorry if you hear a little bit of noise, like I said. So, Heather, one, I want to tell everybody how we met.
Yes, please do. And
Can
and
I
I
tell
want
them?
to also preface, I'm so sorry if I have a dog and I have tried to figure out the best place to put him during this time, but he either barks at my door or he could be in my room and bark. So he's in my room. So if he does, then please,
We'll judge you later. We'll
Okay.
judge you later. We will. Okay, so the quick part about how we met, and this is what I want to encourage people, how just to stay open of the magic that will come into your life. You're one of the few people here on Instagram that I have met prior to Instagram.
Okay.
And I think we met, I want to say, to be honest, like 7 years ago
It was a while
at Trader Joe's. I
because
think
it
it
was
was.
before I moved overseas. Yes.
Yeah. So at the time, you were still living in Switzerland, right?
Belgium. Oh, so
Belgium.
it was while okay. So I must have been here on a trip on a
Yeah,
break.
that's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So you were here, you guys were doing some recon to see whether or not you should move to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And at the time, you didn't know it. My life was just like in complete turmoil because that's when we were just kind of figuring out what was going on with my husband's health.
Mm.
I was working at Trader Joe's because I needed that. That insurance. And I met you just while I was just working the aisle in Trader Joe's. You and your lovely, I believe you were with your
Yep.
daughter.
Okay. I remember this.
I do too. So met and how long ago we met. There's so much that has transformed in your life since then. From
Yeah.
that moment on, you did move here. Can you kind of take us back to that time? Because I think there's a lot of meat in there for other people. So you moved to Charlotte. What does your
Mm-hmm.
life look like at that point, Heather?
So we moved back. I have two kids, and at the time that we moved back from Belgium, my daughter was just starting middle school. So she was
Mm-hmm.
going, that's kind of why we moved back, was to give her a fresh start with middle school. And I had a son in fourth grade.
Yeah.
Um, and life was at the time, looking back, it was very simple. Like it was all about like moving back, finding a home, getting my kids adjusted to being here. Um, at that time I was a stay-at-home mom, so they were just sort of the center of my world. That was what
Mm-hmm.
my world had come, was just raising my kids. And yeah, and my community has always been important to me, so I invested a lot of time in my community. And just sort of we moved around a lot, so I always felt like a big part of my role was sort of laying down roots for my kids wherever we found ourselves.
When
And
you
so
say we, were you married at the
I
time?
was married at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw my role as, like, when we went to Belgium, it was about finding community and making connections and bringing people into our home so that my kids felt like they belonged and had a place. And every
Hmm.
place we moved, I invested pretty much like my first year of being there, trying to do that, trying to connect us.
Was it
And
hard?
um, it wasn't hard because it's something I love to do. I love
Yeah.
people. So,
Yeah.
as you know, and
Yes, I
so it's
do.
something I always enjoyed. It was not, it wasn't easy all the time because it's trying to find the right people that you connect with. That's probably the
Right.
hardest part. But the sort of inviting in is not hard for me. I love to do that.
Hmm.
And I have since learned that it's important. It was something that my kids really valued, that I created that space in our home, for people to come and for them to make friends and all of that. So that was sort of where I was like when I met you. I was getting ready to come back and figure out our new life in Charlotte.
Sure.
And yeah. So, and then shortly after that, as you
Hmm.
know, we moved back. And then about a year later, a friend of mine posted on social media, that she was a breast cancer survivor, and she posted something like, "It's October Awareness Month. It's time to get your mammograms." And
Right.
I thought, I really should get my mammogram. I've been putting it off. I got back from Belgium. I was overdue.
How long had you
Um,
been overdue? I want people to know this. How long had you been overdue at that point?
well, I got one. Well, I was pretty young when I got my first one because my grandmother was a breast cancer survivor,
Okay.
and I was just, they saw me as a little bit high risk. So I think I got my first one right before I went to Belgium, which was actually really good because I had a baseline. It's that baseline is
Okay.
really important because mammograms are all about showing change.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know what's changed, it's really difficult. So I
Hard to do
think,
that comparative analysis to see whether or
right,
not those nodules are new. Because some people have larger lymph nodes.
right,
Some people
exactly.
have very dense breasts. I
Dense
do.
breasts,
Hmm.
exactly. So I went to, so I had my mammogram done when I was 39, my first one, right before I
Okay.
went overseas.
Uh-huh.
And then, so when I moved back, it would have been, I think I put it off another year. So I probably was 40. I was probably around 42 or 43. It's hard,
Okay.
time, years are starting to run
Oh
together,
yeah,
but,
they fall together. They do.
but I saw her post and I thought, I should schedule my appointment. So I went
So at
in.
that point, a couple years had gone by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
And the thing is I had never felt better. That's the thing. You can't go necessarily by how you feel.
Hmm.
Um, so I was working out, I was eating, I've always really well, ate really well.
Hmm.
Um, not a big sugar eater, none of that.
I am. I got to work on that.
So I had like the sort of the lifestyle that wouldn't make me high risk.
Yeah.
I do like my wine for sure, but
Not me. Yes, I love it. Yeah, that's another thing I probably
um,
have to work on.
so I went in and they did a mammogram, and they called me back and they said, "Hey, we just saw something and it doesn't look like much, but we just want to, go ahead and make sure." So I went back in and they called me back again. And the next call was, it does look like something. Let's go ahead and do a needle biopsy. But at the time, they were like, even if you have cancer, it is the tiniest. They described it as a grain of rice. They were like,
Oh,
it is so small.
we
So
got this. Like it's
yeah,
easy.
exactly. Like even if it's positive, like it's not going to be a bad thing. You're
Right.
stage 0. Don't worry about it. So of course you can't not worry about it. But so they called back and they did the needle biopsy, and they called back and said that it was cancer, but that it was
Ooh.
hit, and it was still encapsulated. It was in situ, so it had not left the milk duct, and it was very tiny. And they're like, all we're going to do is we're going to go in, we're going to do a lumpectomy. We'll probably follow it up with radiation. It's your reoccurrence is just the same as anyone else walking down the street. You're fine.
Sure.
So that's what I did. And it was hard because anytime you hear the cancer word, it's scary, but
I can't
I,
imagine.
yeah, I knew my prognosis was really good. And so it was really hard to tell the kids because I knew they would be really scared.
Right.
And the first thing they said, of course, is, "Are you going to lose your hair?" And I said, "No, I'm going to,
Isn't that interesting? I
Mhm.
have heard that women who have cancer and have to go through chemotherapy, the number one concern of women is losing our hair. It's
Yeah,
losing our hair. And I didn't really understand that until I had alopecia, because you met me
we
just when I
talked
think
about
I
that.
was going in it because my hair was falling out.
Right.
And I did not understand that, but I think the reason why it's so connected for us, our hair, it's one of those things that whether or not we have this active connection to it and like, or like on the car, you know, in the car, letting it flow and blow around us, it's something that feels very feminine and
Right.
feels very much a part of who we are as women. And I
Definitely.
think when that femininity, that thing that seems to represent femininity is attacked in any way, that's not our control. Like I can cut
Right.
my hair,
Right.
but I don't want it just to fall out of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
that
agree.
because
And for me, that's exactly it. It comes down to some sort of, vanity connection to my hair as making
yeah,
me beautiful. I think for
and
my
make me feel like
kids,
a woman.
right, right. And I think for my kids, though, it was a visual reminder. It would be a visual
Yeah,
reminder that I was sick
yeah,
and that the world would know I was sick, and they were really
yeah.
scared of that. So
Oh,
that was a
those
really big
babies.
deal for them. Yeah, that
Hmm.
was a really big deal for them. So basically I went through the treatment plan and I came out on the other side. I did a scan in February of that right after. So I was diagnosed in October, scan cleared in February that I had no cancer. And I just kind of went about my life, and I would say, I mean, it definitely affected me, but I wasn't like grappling with my death every day, like the
Yeah,
future would like
right.
what was about to happen in the future. But um, I kind of bounced back pretty quickly and got back to life. And I think my kids were pretty resilient during that time. But then in, I would say May, so just 2 months after I had a clear scan,
Hmm.
I felt a lump in my breasts on the other side. And
Same breast or just the other
the
breast?
other breast.
Okay.
But this time, as the time before, it was a grain of sand. I could have never felt it. This time, I actually felt like this hard
This is
mass.
2 months after.
2 months after a clear scan. So I went to my radiation oncologist and told him, and he kind of felt around and he's like, I think it's just hormonal. Your hormones have been changing.
Hmm.
Let's just keep an eye on it. And um, insurance probably isn't going to cover a mammogram right now. Anyways, you just had one in October. So your next one will be October. And this man is lovely. I adore him. He treated me the second time, but
Yeah, my look is
he got
not to
he,
him. My
he
look
got it
is to
wrong. No,
insurance.
he got it wrong, and he did. I mean, he felt terrible after that. He didn't catch it the first time. Um, so he said,
Wait. So I'm sorry
yeah,
because I was having so many issues with that. I was having issues with the fact that insurance would have a problem. I'm like, well, if
right,
my doctor says that there's something there, who cares
right.
about your insurance? But
We maybe
second of all,
could have pushed that, but yeah,
yeah. So he didn't push it. So I just want to make sure the takeaway. He's like, I think it's hormonal, and he was behaving and treating it like it was a hormonal something.
right.
How did we find out that it's actually
And I
cancer?
think that that's probably what I wanted to believe too. Like
Right.
deep inside, I obviously had fear, but I also thought, well, the doctor's telling me it's hormonal, so I don't have anything to worry about. So it's easy to grasp onto things, even
Sure.
even if they're not true. If it's like the truth you want, you
Right.
grasp onto it. So 2 or 3, let's see. So that was May. It wasn't until September I felt another lump. I was putting my son to bed and I wasn't wearing a bra and I bent down and something hard hit my arm and I was like, oh no. And I remember going out to my then husband and I was like, I have another lump in my breast. And so I made an appointment, went in. My radiation oncologist was actually off that day, but I saw somebody else and they kind of looked at everything and they were like, okay, we need to send you in for an ultrasound right away. So I went in, just days later, and I went in by myself because usually tests like that take a long time. So I wasn't thinking I was going to get any information. So I just
Mhm.
casually went into the ultrasound technician. She's doing the ultrasound. She is doing my breast, but then she has me lift up my arm. And then I'm like, okay, hold on. There's lymph nodes down the side of my arm. This isn't,
Mhm.
I think something's wrong.
What are we looking
So
for?
yeah. And so then she called the doctor in and the doctor came in and did the ultrasound and she just looked at me and she's like, I'm really sorry, but you have cancer again. Like it's in your lymph nodes. You've got two masses. I mean, I was in complete shock at that point because it had grown so fast. I'd gone from a clear scan to 5 months
2 months
later.
before.
Yeah.
What do they attribute? Okay. There's so many things I want to know. I want to
Yeah.
know, I want to know how you are feeling in that moment. I want to know,
Hmm.
what do they attribute such fast, tremendous growth? Because you were on top of it at that point. I
Right.
mean, if you had behaved with that as you had behaved the 2 years prior to you going like, I think I need to get, you wouldn't be here right
Right.
now. And that
Right.
hurts my heart.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
want to know what transpired in 2 months that would cause this. Do we
Hmm.
know?
No, I mean, I think my opinion is that my cancer was triple positive, which means it was fed by estrogen, progesterone, and this other thing called HER2 positive.
Uh-huh.
And I think, I've always, it's so funny. We, as women, we need to listen to our bodies. And I think we know so much more about our bodies than the doctors know.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to them for information, but they don't listen to
Yeah.
us really. They listen to science. And I'm a big science believer, but they
I get
listen
it.
to like all the studies
Hmm.
and all of those things. But
But
my
there needs to be a cross section of science and intuition.
Definitely. And I have
Hmm.
been going to, since I was 17 years old, I've been going to my OB with issues around my hormones. I have endometriosis. I had to have a tumor removed from my ovary. I was going in through weird periods of like having my cycle for 10 days and then I would stop for a week and then it would start again. And I would always tell my doctor like, well, I have this weird back pain. Like, I was just very in tune to my body, but it was always like, just put you on birth control or just take
Right.
Advil or just, but to me, I think there's a bigger picture of that. My hormones were always out of whack and it was
Always.
feeding the cancer in my body.
Hmm. And
And it was
setting you up
and it
for
was just on
future cancer.
overdrive. I think
Yep.
at that point, like probably my immune system had been suppressed with the first cancer.
Hmm.
My hormones were all out of whack. I'd done radiation and surgeries and all of those things. And I think that my
Those
hormones were
times the
probably in
perfect.
overdrive. Yeah. And just feeding the cancer. That's my
Yeah.
only explanation.
No,
But I
that makes
just,
sense to me. It's like you were the
yeah,
perfect at that point. You have a suppressed immune system. You still have this overdrive of hormones that honestly you have been feeling in your body since you were a young girl. The only thing is you weren't a scientist or a doctor and you weren't able to connect all those dots. You weren't
right,
able to connect that pain in your back, having a period for 10 days, not seeing it, had
right,
anything to do with anything.
right, right.
Yeah.
And that's my best guess is that, my hormones were kind of going crazy and fed it really quickly. And because it grew really fast.
Right. Two
Um,
months.
yeah, well, from the 2 months, and then the second one was about 5 months later.
Okay.
So a total of 5 months for it to spread to two masses in my lymph nodes.
That's
So,
crazy.
anyways, at that point, then the treatment plan was chemo, double mastectomy, radiate. It was the whole thing. It was losing hair, and that was once again back to the hair. Having
God.
to tell my kids the second time that I was sick was absolutely brutal because the first time it was like very light and yes, this is happening, but everything's going to be great. And the second time was really just heavy and hard and serious and also just sort of heartbreaking because, we make these promises to our kids we can't keep, which is like,
I'm not
okay,
going to
well,
die.
I had cancer, but I'm all better.
I'm
And
all
I
right.
don't have any chances of getting it
No.
higher than anyone else. And then I have to go back to him and tell him, you know what, you guys, I actually have it back. And they were crushed.
I bet. Because that's your
And
biggest fear when you're a kid.
your
Your
biggest fear.
biggest fear is that you would lose your parents.
Right. And so then it was, mom's going to lose her hair and I'm going to be really sick and it's going to be a long haul. So yeah, I mean, we can go into that later, but I think they're better for it. I think I shouldn't say better for it because there's a lot of trauma still around it, but
Yeah.
I think that it's made them better human beings.
Yes.
But it's definitely been hard. And I think they still, it manifests often in our
I
home.
bet.
Their fear around me being sick, for sure.
So I'm going to take a little, I'm going to deviate just a little from this line of questions. And one, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I know from on this side of it, you have always looked remarkable. Like I've always just been so impressed with you when I see you on social media. And right after this, after all of this and through all of this, just tell the people something you created.
Oh, my business.
Yes.
So yeah, that was exciting. Well, I'll give you a little background. So I've loved hospitality. I think it's a gift that I have, and
You do.
I
You
love,
do have a gift.
yeah, I love to bring people into my home, and I love to
Gift.
entertain.
Hmm. Hmm.
And my friends, I've always, before I got sick, I was toying with the idea of going back to work, but I was like, what do I do? My background was in like policy on violence against women. That was what I did pre-kids, and
Yeah.
do I want to go back into that kind of work, or do I want to create something myself? And when I got sick, I had been toying with this idea of doing this cheese and charcuterie boards hosted by Heather. And it just kind of went to the wayside, obviously, when I was diagnosed. And so after my second bout of cancer, I was still in chemo, but starting to kind of, I was through the worst part of it. And at that point, I was hit with something even worse, which was my marriage was falling apart. And so my
At the end of your
husband,
second,
yeah,
at
I
the end
was
of your second bout
finishing
with cancer.
chemo, and that's a whole nother story. But um, yeah, I knew we decided to separate, and at the same time, he also didn't have a job, and so I didn't have a job. He didn't have a job. We were separating, and I just was terrified. And I remember I was sitting on the couch and thought to myself, what can I do right now to start bringing income into my home? And I was like, cheese and charcuterie boards. That's what I have to do. That's something I can do in my home because I didn't have anyone else to help with my kids. You know what I mean? I needed something.
Yeah.
I couldn't go get a job at that point that was in an office for 8 hours because I was the single parent.
Sure.
And I was also still in chemo. So I was trying to figure out how I could do something that would work with my lifestyle. And so I remember a friend of mine said, don't wait to have everything together. Like if you have an idea, start. And
That's right.
you can get it, the dot all your I's and T's and cross your T's later. But
Apple does that.
start.
That's what Apple does. They
Right.
put out they give you your iPhone and they're like, oh, actually, we got this update because
Right.
this is jacked up. Right. They do that.
And I just think we often we put so much pressure on ourselves to have it be perfect, and we just never start it because
That's right.
it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the perfect time. You're never going to
Never.
have everything in place. So I just took her advice. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. So I posted on Facebook, hey, I'm doing cheese and charcuterie boards delivered to your home. And my friend Erica, who lives here in Charlotte, and funny enough, she lived with me in Belgium too. That day, she messages me. She's like, I'd like a board tonight. Can you do one? And I ran to Home Goods and bought a board and ran to Trader Joe's, our meeting place.
Yes. I love it.
And
they're beautiful.
Yeah, I did a board. And
I mean, literally, I need people to know your boards, Heather, are so beautiful. I had won a wine thing at one of the local wine stores here, 20 people wine tasting. And I was like, Heather, I need one of those boards. And you're like, okay, when would you need it? I was like, because I'm ridiculous. Tomorrow? And
I'm good with last minute.
And you got it for me. And I just want to say real quick, I looked like I was a rock star.
Yeah, I do. It's something I really enjoy doing. Because I have a passion for gathering people. I feel like the cheese board is like the perfect thing to gather people.
Yeah.
Because usually you make a plate and you go somewhere.
Yeah.
And this keeps everybody in a central place. You stand around like a kitchen island
and just pick from it.
Yeah. And so to me, it's like this natural way to keep people together and talking. So that's one of the reasons I love a cheese and charcuterie board is the connectedness.
Well, that's actually a beautiful segue into my next question that I want to talk about. So, Heather, one thing people do not know about you is that you were in an interracial marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 2 biracial children.
Yes.
And we all are living in this same world on the same planet.
Yes.
I would love to engage you in conversation on that. You are a white mother to biracial children. Mm-hmm. In a world right now that has a pretty high tone. The tone is high. It's ringing in my ears and it's hurting me. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to some of your experiences and how you're feeling right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling really, I woke up feeling really sad this morning because, this weekend I went up to the mountains and you kind of get away for a couple days, and I was looking at social media, but my daughter and I sat last night and watched some CNN, which, I, I'd like to turn an eye and not have to watch it, but the truth
Yeah.
is it's important to also watch and see what's going on.
No, I'm battling that.
But it's just devastating. It's
Yeah.
devastating to see so many people in so much pain.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. That's what we're seeing on TV, is just people who are hurting and pain and
That's
angry,
right.
and they have every right to be. We should all be, really. We should all be. So yeah, so I'm feeling a little heavy about that. And I'm also personally just grappling with how I, in my own circle, make change. I think that it's, it's easy to post on social media, like Black Lives Matter and forward articles, but what are we going to do? That's the easy part. What are we going to do beyond? What am I going to do beyond that? And I've just been thinking, and I've had some conversations, some difficult conversations with some of my Black friends around even how I handle my privilege, and like, how am I using my privilege? What am I doing that's not effective?
Tell me, what has made the conversations difficult? Why are they difficult?
Because for me, they're difficult because I come from a place of good intention, but that's not enough. It's going to take white people. It's not about good intention. It's about dismantling the structure that's been created in our community, which in our world, which we're a part of, where I'm
Right.
white. I may not be individually systematically oppressing someone, but if I'm not actively looking at everything in my life and the way I live in privilege and the way I move through the world, because as a white woman, I have the privilege to move through the world in a way and hurt people and say things and do things, not even meaning to sometimes, because I don't have to think about it. Like,
Right.
I don't have to think about every single thing that I do, because
Right.
I don't have to.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
On that, as a white woman, and I'm a Black woman, clearly. Pardon me, I have something in my throat. I work in a corporate setting, and I have worked with more white women than I have actually with Black women. And I've always wanted to ask someone in a corporate setting, and my best girlfriend is white, but she doesn't work with me in a corporate setting. So I just wanted to ask somebody this. I have found that white women have difficulty acknowledging my difficulty as a Black woman. They can acknowledge the part of me that is not allowed into the room or is disqualified. It's been my experience because I'm a woman, but they will not touch the Black part. For example, several years ago, I work in new home sales, and I was at this model home, and it was just around the time of election, and there was a lot in the air. And this guy came in, and he was furious. He was furious. He was just really mad because people were double parking their cars on the street that he lived on. And he somehow thought that I controlled this. And keep in mind, this is a community that was about 15 years old. And the part of the community that we had purchased and currently we're building was like a mile from his house. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So what he was talking about was a valid issue, but it was certainly an HOA issue. It wasn't like our dump trucks or our construction trucks it was just like the people on the street. And so I listened to him and I said, so this sounds like you have a valid HOA complaint. I think you need to take that. And he's like, no, you run the HOA. And I was like, I promise I don't. I have to go to the HOA and complain about things that happen as well. And he just was so hell-bent on making this my issue. And it just so happened that particular day, that a white male colleague of mine had come to visit me who had never come to visit me before. And he was there. And while he was there, he was stepping in between me. He was keeping this guy a little bit at bay. And I kept saying to the guy that I wasn't there. Finally, I said, you know what, sir, now you're being rude and aggressive. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I've tried to help you. I've tried to point you in the right direction. He's like, I'm not leaving. I was like, actually, it's private property.
Yeah.
I feel aggressed upon.
Yeah.
I'm going to call 911 if you don't leave. And he's just started throwing out all these horrible things and saying stuff at me. And my colleague, who actually didn't even work for the company, my colleague, this guy is clearly wanting to engage my colleague, like ask him questions like he's my boss. And I'm like, he don't even work here. If we need something to get done, it's this black girl who's going to get it done. But anyway, once he sees that I'm picking up the phone and I'm really calling 911, he starts making his way to the door and the exit. And he's like, you Hillary supporter? And I was like, I mean, like, wow, right? And I'm telling it with great humor right now, but it was a very volatile, scary moment.
Right.
Very volatile, scary moment. So I called my then boss to let them know what one of their employees was experiencing. That's all right. And I thought that certainly they would want to know this. And what was clear was that, that's all right. What was clear, that's right. What was clear was that my boss, did not recognize how scared I was. And B, she was a woman, a white woman. And B, she could only acknowledge that he didn't want to talk to a woman. It was more than that. Yeah. He didn't want to talk to this black woman with a head wrap. It was, and it was very clear, and I felt it. Right. And I consistently felt that in a court. I felt like my black womanness is not acknowledged here. And the things that I encounter in that black womanness is not. So I'm probably asking you a question that's maybe even greater than your shoulder. So forgive me if I pile.
No, please don't. It's fine.
But I want to know, why does it seem to me, and I have many other instances, why does it seem that white women are unable or unwilling to see the additive difficulty for their sister of color?
I know.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally understand what you're saying. Probably because it's painful and it's having to because I'm trying to put it into words.
That's all right. Thank you for having this difficult conversation with me.
Of course. I think that a lot of white people are unable to wrap their minds around that because I think a lot of it comes down to having relationships with black people and people that look different than them to actually hear those stories all the time, to get to a place where you're like, oh, wow, this is happening all the time, and to be able to embrace that. But I think that as a white person, once again, it comes down to privilege. Like, I have the privilege of moving through the world. And in that situation, I probably wouldn't have had to be as scared because I don't have the history of what might happen to me if I call police and all of those things.
Thank you for acknowledging that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
because all those things were going through my head, by the way. And I was in a very rural part of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Where I would go through a whole day and not see one person who looked like me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like that situation would have been totally different for me. Why can't we? I think it is believing people. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like,
believing people.
It's believing people. It's like when you're a white person and a black person tells you something that they're feeling or something they experienced, and we tell them it's not true, it's because we don't believe them. I mean, I don't know what else. I'm trying to like boil it down here. And that's all I can come up with, because we're invalidating something that you're sharing with me, you know, you're sharing something with me, I'm invalidating it because it's not my experience, or I don't believe that it really happened, or I don't believe that was the intent. I'm judging all these intentions, right?
Right.
I'm trying to judge this intent of this man.
That's the
And
exhausting
you know
part.
from your experience, like
Yeah.
I know, you know what you're feeling,
Right.
right? You know
That's
exactly what's
that's
happening.
exactly right. You
But
know what
but as white people, we don't feel it the same way. So we want to try to dismiss it or not, or it's, and to admit it, it's so painful, right? Like that's what I'm getting
Is it
to in
because it
terms of,
requires something of you?
yeah,
If
it
if the
requires
moment
us
you
to
go, oh,
change.
this is legit, now I have to change, or now I have to be actively a part of creating a solution. And it's a difficult solution. It's not, otherwise if there was a solution that we all knew and we agreed upon it, it would have been implemented a long time ago. So
And I think that's what you're seeing right now. I think you're
mhm,
seeing in part I think for the first time, I'm seeing more white people
mhm,
speaking out. And I think it's a place of, I can no longer sit by and just like be nice to Black people or have Black
okay,
friends
yeah,
or not be racist. I actually have to do the hard work of figuring out exactly my part in it
mhm,
and how I change and what I'm going to actually do. And I was listening to this podcast yesterday. It was put on, it's three younger Black people, and they were talking about what's going on in this world. And the question was like, what can we do? And the answer was, we can't do anything. White people need to do something because like we are being victimized, and then we're being asked how we're going to solve it.
right, right.
Like, what
It
is
is a
that?
lot. It
And
is a
it
lot.
just dawned, and they're like, no, we need white people to dismantle this system. We need a system overhaul. We need allies. We need people that are going to really step up and do something because we can't change it. We're not, it's like saying the person who's being shot by the police is causing it, and they should have done something different. It's
Right.
like
Or the
they
girl who
can't
got raped.
change that. We have
Or
to
the girl who
change it.
got raped, her skirt was too
Right,
short.
right, right,
Right. That's what happens when you wear short skirts. You get raped.
right.
No.
And it really struck me that I'm like, I personally need to do the work to figure out my privilege, and then I need to use my platform for change. And
Ooh.
it's really, it's when you said, why is it hard? It's hard because I realize that my actions can be part of the problem.
Ooh.
Whether it's deliberate or not, my actions can be part of the problem. And that's why I couldn't sleep last night after a conversation
I
I
didn't sleep
had.
last. Me too. My best girlfriend, I told you, she's white. And I mean, we love each other implicitly. Like her children call me auntie, and my daughter calls her auntie. Like it is, I've known her longer than I haven't known her. You know, I met her probably when I was like 20, and now I'm 45. So you know what I mean?
Right.
So, and yesterday, we just had really difficult conversation, and I left it. This is very transparent for me because I haven't processed it internally fully. I left it really heavy and feeling like I said the wrong things, and I felt like I was like, oh my God, was I the white person in that conversation? No offense, but like, did I ask the wrong questions? Did I not pay attention to what she was saying? So she's in San Diego, and they are burning it to the ground. And she lives right outside, actually, in a little town called La Mesa. And they were very conscientious about moving to La Mesa. La Mesa is this area that's kind of like, you and I live in Charlotte, so we know it's kind of like Noda, Plaza
My parents
Midwood.
are from there.
Oh, La Mesa, right? That's right. So there are areas of La Mesa that are like, wow, who lives there? And there's areas of La Mesa like, roll up the window, lock the door. You know what I mean? So it's a little dodgy. But they were very intentional about being there because they wanted their children to be around people of different ethnicities. They wanted them to see it. This was normalized for them. Joy grew up all over the world. They wanted their children, it really could just, they wanted their children to see different socioeconomic backgrounds. Like they were being really good white people. You know what I mean?
really good white people, like, okay, we want this to be our daughter, our sons, whoever, because they didn't have children at the time. We want this to be their reality. And now they're watching their town be burned to the ground, and it's coming within like a half a mile of their home. And they slept in a hotel the night before. They were just really scared. And she's like, Shay, I am scared. And her husband, Kevin, is not letting them go back to the house because they are a target. She feels like they are a target because they are blonde, blue-eyed, white, like there's no. And there were several things that struck me while she was saying these things. One, I hated that my girlfriend was feeling so unsafe and so scared and looking at uncharted territory. Like, she sent me photos. It looks like a war. It doesn't even look like it's America. It's like, is that Afghanistan? No. That's La Mesa, you know? And so I'm torn with, I do not want that to be the reality for my girl, my sister. And then there's this other part of me that's like, that's how Black people feel all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and I was trying to not give reason. It's just all about context, right? It's like, it's not about excusing it. It's not like saying, therefore I agree with it. It's just important to understand, why would people be that angry?
Right.
And she's like, but they're agitators. There are people who are being hired, who are being brought in. You see them being brought in. They're like these anarchists who are just coming in, and they're inciting it. And it's not even the Black people. It's like these, it's just like, there's actually tons of white people, but they're inciting it and they're like tearing it down. And this, she's like, this just, and I hear it. And she's like the most manly woman I've ever known. And what I mean by that is she is like stalwart, like in her emotion. She's not like I'm the crybaby. She's not the crybaby at all. And when I'm hearing her voice quiver and I'm hearing her tears through the phone, listen, I know it's really bad. It's kind of like, I don't know how often your ex-husband cried, but I'm going to assume, like most men, he didn't cry a lot. So when tears flowed, you knew, ooh, shit was real, right? So that's kind of what I was left. And I didn't have answers, and I'm trying to talk. I was like, this is from years of what you're seeing is, and she's like, but I live a good life. And I was like, I know, but it is a white people issue. She's like, how can I not be offended by that, Shay? I'm white. And I'm like, no, I'm talking systematically. How I'm asking you something more. I'm asking more of you I'm putting this on your shoulders right now more, Heather. How can I be a better friend? Because I didn't want her to feel like I was attacking her, but I wanted her to understand that even if there are agitators there, you cannot agitate which isn't already festering and very sore. It's like, if you fell asleep in my house, stone cold drunk, with your purse wide open and all your money all out there for me, you're going to wake up in the morning, and Heather, and all your money's going to still be there. I'm not stealing your money. One, I'm not in a desperate situation. Two, I don't steal.
Right.
So even if you agitate a situation that has no temperature, it's nothing. So my question was, and I inappropriately was asking the question because I wanted her to kind of see something greater than, I know I cannot imagine what you're looking at. I cannot imagine what she's seeing, because thankfully we're really blessed here in Charlotte right now. And I pray and I hope that we're able to keep this semblance of peace. But, you know, I've never seen anything like this before, but I left that conversation just going like, if there was not a pain, you can't agitate, which isn't there. So the only reason why they can agitate, even if there's groups of bad people paying people to come in and incite, you can't incite a pain that's not there.
Agreed. Yeah.
And anyway, I left the conversation like I had failed my friend and like I had failed a proper discourse. And
I don't think so. I think that I personally, and I'm speaking from experience because I told you I had a difficult conversation yesterday. And that's the uncomfortable part, is that it's time that white people have to be challenged about even the people who, like I said, have good intentions, who have Black people in their family and their friend circle, who are in relationship, who think they're,
Who are good white
you
people.
said good, I'll use that term, that's not enough anymore. And that's the hard part, is realizing, like, because when you're just being good, it's really about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change.
The
Being
world.
good is being loving and kind, and seeing people for who they are is a very important part of it. But that's not going to make the change we need. We have to go one step beyond now.
What does that look like?
That's what I'm grappling with. But it can't be centered around me feeling like I'm being a good person.
Right.
And me thinking that I can fix everything. I think that the start for me is going to have to be doing some soul searching around my own heart.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine has pointed out the book White Fragility, which I've started.
I saw that. I want to read that.
It's hard. Because it isn't about being good. It's about dismantling a system, a long history of oppression, and finding your own part in it as a white person.
Mm-hmm.
And even how we do things with good intentions, and it's hurtful. It's
Mm-hmm.
hurtful. And so,
like what?
Being aware of that. So I'll tell you what happened yesterday, a couple of days ago, which is why I was having these conversations.
Thank you.
Was at work, we had a couple hour D&I session.
Mm-hmm. What's D&I? I don't know what that is.
Diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
Carved out for employees to talk, and it was 2 hours. It was just talking about what was happening. And I didn't speak during the D&I session. I just listened, and I just heard mostly of my Black colleagues just talking about the pain that they were in, and the fear that they've lived in their entire lives, and just being really vulnerable and real about it. Well, I'm a writer. I love to process through writing. And I also am a storyteller. I like to share my personal experiences.
Me too.
Yeah. But you know what? There's a time and place for that, because I walk through life with the privilege of, I can share my story whenever I want, and people are going to listen. And I'm a white woman. Like, didn't think it that way.
Yeah. No.
But I'm
it
just telling you,
exists.
it's a privilege. And so
It's just like a man does not think he is privileged when he's walking down. And I be specific about this. Just like a white man does not think he is privileged when he's walking down a dark street at night, or running. Like, I see white men all the time running in the middle of the night. And I'm like, as a woman,
are you doing that?
Right. As a woman, we would never think we're going to run around a neighborhood or a dark area. Most women do not feel safe running around, even if they live in the most safe environment. So that's what you're talking about. That privilege that man is executing, that he is unaware of. He doesn't feel threatened. He's never felt the threat of walking his sexy body, running his sexy body down the street. We've been catcalled at. We've been, I see you, girl. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to say. I want people to hear that.
Even the judgment, like, I can say what I feel like I'm often believed because I'm a white woman, right? Mm-hmm. And like, you might write something, and it's like, well, was that really her experience? Can
I tell you something? That's probably my most annoying thing about white people, is anytime I have been bold enough to share, I shouldn't say anytime, a lot. It's much less frequent now, but there was a time when oftentimes I would share an experience that was very racist and very hurtful to me. And what I found was white people loved to quickly jump in and let me know how it wasn't racist, how they didn't really mean that. And I just was like, I kept saying, have you ever walked into a room, like, you haven't seen your mother, if your mother's still alive, you haven't seen your mother in a while, or maybe the room full of cousins, friends in a while, and you walk in and you feel the love? They don't have to say a word. You feel the love.
Right.
Well, you feel the hate too.
Right. No,
you feel it just like that. It's intangible. People don't have to say, I love you. But when you walk into a room with a whole bunch of people who love you and want you there, you feel it.
Yes.
And that's how racism feels too.
I agree. It's you know it. So I decided to write, and this is where it's really it's hard for me to say, like, I do feel like what I wrote was wrong. So what I did was, I was feeling their fear, and I related it to a time in my life when I was attacked,
Mhm.
And I spent the next 10 years pretty much living in a state of anxiety and fear.
I'm gonna have to ask you to unpack that in a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And so I was writing and saying, like, because like I said, I want to, there's this empathetic, if we kind of connect theory in my mind that kind of runs through my life of like, it's all about connection and all of this.
Right.
So I wrote this blog post, or it wasn't even a blog post. I just wrote this thing about how fear hindered my life for 10 years. Like, it was a really hard place to live. And like, the simple tasks were not easy anymore. And all of these things. Fine. That's my truth. That's fine. But what I did was I connected it to the conversation earlier. And one of my Black colleagues pointed out to me that that was tone deaf, that was taking something and making it about me instead of about what was the conversation was about. And
But your intention was just to try to interject a similarity so that you could have a, I think your intention was to draw a line of, I think I know what this may feel like in my world as best as I can.
And it was also to say that nobody should have to live like that. The fact that I have had lived like that for 10 years, I can't imagine living that way. And the concept in of itself is not bad. The timing and the sort of the privilege of which I moved through that and posted and didn't think, it's like, once again, I have the privilege of writing and putting it out there and not necessarily thinking about how it's going to affect other people. Whereas I think you, as a Black woman, would have thought a lot more about what you were putting out there at that time, because you have to. And I don't have to. And that's where my
with trembling, I wrote Dear White People, trembling. And I just was like, I just can't be quiet anymore.
And that's why I say it's painful, because it's not really about your intention anymore. It's like I have to do the work to make sure that my movement through this world, the space I'm taking up, I'm thoughtful about it, and I'm using my privilege for good, not for myself, not to be good, but to be. I don't want to be good. I want to help make change. I want to make the world more just. I want to, it's just not enough
just
to be like happy feely and I'm going to post Black Lives Matter anymore. I have to be more thoughtful about.
What do you think that's going to look like? What do you think the next step is going to look like for you when you're saying, I have to be more thoughtful in my privilege? I have to be like, what do you think that's going to look like?
Oh, it's already starting. It's hard conversations, both. It's listening. It's listening to Black voices speaking into my life. And once again, I'm going to go back to this, which is another thing of privilege. Like, it's not Black people's, responsibility to educate us. And that's another thing. It's a lot of white people are like, go to Black people and say, like, what should I do? And that we have to move away from that.
Yeah.
And so
I used to call it being the Black ambassador. I was at boarding school and I was like, I am so tired of being the Black ambassador.
Right.
What do Black people listen to? What kind of food do Black people eat? I'm like, what do white people eat? Like, you eat what you eat.
That's what I keep hearing. I think that it's going to go back to like the change that needs to happen is in the white community. And so it's having the difficult conversations with friends, which I always do, but they're rising in tension. I'm having a lot of conversations, but first and foremost, I do have to do the work on myself. I need to be able, I'm not going to sit and wait, but I also need to be doing it in tandem. I need to jump into some reading. I think innately my heart's in the right place, but I need to find those little hard parts that need to be changed. The being more thoughtful about how I am using my privilege, how my words matter. And
do you think that sometimes because you have brown babies, it has made you feel more a part of the dialogue or the discourse, or like maybe a blind spot in the privilege that you possess because you felt a part of the culture?
Definitely. And I think and I think just in general, a lot of white liberal people think they're doing the right thing, and like, we're voting and I'm for this policy and this and that. But the reality is, like, if we if we keep doing what we've always done, nothing's going to change. And that's my biggest fear right now is like, how do we really, I shouldn't even say how do I in my own life, how am I going to live differently now and use my platform and change my own ways, my own heart, so that we can have lasting change, because we are at a boiling point, obviously.
Yes. I mean, it's painful.
And back to even your friend, it's like, yes, I think what you said to her was actually, I know that you are struggling with it, but I think that is so important that white people need to stop judging the rioting and the protests. Like, this is pain, and they are rioting and protesting murder, like endless murders. This is, unfortunately, it's really not that crazy.
Right. When you think of what it's coming out of. I get it.
But so many white people can't see that, because so many white people don't even say that it's murder. So like,
right.
There's a disconnect there.
There is a disconnect.
And until
how he died, the passing of, I'm like,
yeah,
or the murder of. I mean, like,
and what did he do? Why are we talking about what he did to get murdered?
That's what I'm always right now. The big thing I'm on right now in my life is asking good questions. Don't ask inferior questions. Inferior questions lead to two things. They lead to greater hopelessness and more circling of the drain and moving nowhere. Yeah. Or they leave you more ensconced of what you already believe. So ask the good questions. Good questions transform lives. They transform yours and others. They expand your mind. So for me, the good question is, why would this be a valid response? Why would this be something that's seething? That's the question. And I don't have the answer necessarily, but I think it leads to transformation. Like, okay, oh my God, this is years of pain. This is years, ancestral years too.
Right.
Of feeling the yoke of a whole society on your throat.
Right.
And it was like all of society was all right with seeing it. And George's going,
Right.
And I think that was just too much. We couldn't just keep hacking it down and pretending.
Mm-hmm. And, I'll you ask what I'm going to do. I think that for all white people, I'm going to make a sort of blank statement, but I think it's time. We're going to have to humble ourselves and listen and take hard feedback and be willing to change. I mean, that's the truth of it. Nobody likes to be told that they're privileged and they're hurting people, and it's a hard place to be in. Sure. But that's where it's the truth. Once again, it's believing the truth. It's the truth. And if you're not going to acknowledge that, we can't change it. Like, if you're not acknowledging privilege and you're not acknowledging the pain that you're causing, then you can't change it. And so I guess that's sort of where I am. Like, okay, I've got to figure out a way to change myself and our system.
You're beautiful. Go on. We're down to our last minute and a half, so I just want to ask you a couple of questions that will allow people to have takeaways. What's a really good book that you're reading right now? In the spirit of James Lipton, he always asks questions that moved it and brought levity and joy to people's lives. What's a good book that you're reading right now that you find transformative or useful?
Well, White Fragility that I just talked about.
Okay.
I'm just picked it back up, and then also I just finished Untamed, which I loved.
Ooh, I got to read that. And by Glennon Doyle. And what is a good song? What is a song right now that's speaking to your soul?
Ooh, a song that's speaking to that's a good. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think.
No, that's
I
right.
listen to music all the time, so I'm just
Me too.
What song do I?
It could just be a song.
I know. Well, I wouldn't say it speaks to my soul, but I was listening to it the other day, and I was like, this is so fitting, This Is America.
Okay.
It's not
by Childish Gambino.
I was just listening to it, and I'm like,
it's true.
He wrote this several years ago, and We're just
Last 20 seconds. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get there?
oh gosh. You lived your life to the fullest.
That is
Good job.
beautiful. I love you.
Love you
Thank
too.
you so much.